All right, Cameron Falkner. We've obviously been connected for a long time digitally. I don't know that we've ever had the chance to shake hands out in the real world, but nonetheless, we've been connected for a while. Like I said, dating all the way back to our corporate world, corporate lives, and it's cool to see now what you're doing, and obviously what I'm doing with Junk Raider. And wanted to invite you on the podcast just to hear a little bit about your story, your backdrop, and get a little bit more information, obviously, on your business, but kind of why you chose to get into it, why this field specifically. Any type of information would be great for the audience. And so, Cameron, over to you for a quick intro. Would love to hear about it, and we'll kick it off that way.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Davis. Yeah, my name's Cameron Falkner. I'm the owner of Condor Cleaning of the Triangle. I live in Wilmington, North Carolina, but do most of my business in the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill, really all the way to the coast. I own a pressure washing business. Condor Cleaning was started as a franchise really at the beginning of this year of 2024 in January, where we specialize in drone cleaning. So everybody that's a part of Condor Cleaning is kind of it's mandatory for us to have a drone. And so really the way I got into it, I lived in Charlotte, and that's kind of how Davis, you and I met. I worked in the corporate IT sales space for about 15 years. I grew up around pressure washing. My dad is a landlord and owns close to 100 rental property. So I was really every summer from really probably from 15 years old through high school, and then all throughout college, like that was my summer job. I used to go out with a 2.5 gallon per minute pressure washer in the back of the truck and unload it, and had a pump sprayer full of detergent and spraying down houses and then rinsing them off. But when I lived in Charlotte, I've been in corporate sales for so long, and I was highly successful in my sales positions. Was the number one sales rep at several different companies, and I always just I had that burning desire that I was always kind of running my own franchise within whatever company I was with, and was successful at that and doing generating new business and that type of thing. So I've always had the desire to it's time for me to, go out and do something on my own. And so a few years ago, I heard about Lucid Bots, where they, just getting into the drone pressure washing space. And so I thought it was super interesting. My brother was he had his Part 1 to 7 and would do, a bunch of media stuff for just random companies. And that was kind of his thing with the drone. And I was like, drones plus pressure washing. And so I started to, about a year ago, I started just sort of like on the side, my own pressure washing business. I called it Cardinal Pro Services, where I was, partnering with a bunch of realtors in Wilmington and, doing a lot of just houses. Sometimes I would do houses from like 7 to 8:30 in the morning before work. And then when I got off work, I would, do 2 or 3 hours worth of houses. I was doing, about $8,000 to $10,000 a month, on the side while I had a job, and that was, outside of work hours. And so I got to thinking, I'm like, man, if I'm able to do this on the side and make, $30,000 in 3 months, like I'm pretty sure I can, if I put all my efforts into it, I can take this thing full time. And so that's when I was, started watching YouTube and, doing more investigations into the drone cleaning. I ended up, watching a bunch of Lucid's videos on YouTube, and then a guy named Donnie Berth, who's one of the franchisors of Condor Cleaning. Him and Ryan Godwin, they're the two franchisors. They both have YouTube channels, and so I started watching all their stuff and started following Donnie. This was back in December of last year. I started following Donnie on LinkedIn, started liking all his posts, and he ended up just randomly messaging me and say, I guess he saw all my like me stalking me, and reached out, and so we had, I don't know, we probably had a 3-hour call on, I think it was like a Tuesday night, it was like December 14th or 15th, something like that. And so the next day I had Zoom info, and I had, contacts just from previous jobs in the facility space. So, really from like 8 to 9 a.m. and then from, I call it, 4 to 6 at night for a few hours a day, 2 or 3 hours a day, I started lobbing some calls into directors of facilities and property management companies. And, next thing you knew, like I was talking to Duke University, I was talking to their director of facilities for their athletic facilities, and like big, legit jobs, and they had high interest in it. And
Yeah.
speaking of Duke, we just finished cleaning Duke's football stadium this weekend with the drone. And
Nice.
Davis, you've been asking for some drone on drone video, so I've got a good one coming out here soon for you.
Hopefully you sprayed a little poison on the field to kill out some.
Yeah,
I'm a Carolina fan, so you got. Hopefully you did something.
I grew up a Carolina fan, but I will put on a Duke hat because of how clean the football stadium is now. So for all the Dukies, if you go to a football game, the stadium's going to be super clean for you.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's just I just talking to Donnie and Ryan, the two franchisors, we really had a kind of more of a personal connection. Like it just felt right. And then I'd done a market research and figured out kind of what my initial cost would be, buying a trailer, a truck, a drone, every insurance, just everything that takes to start a business. Took out I guess I officially joined Condor towards the end of February. In March, we were already doing demos for Duke, several other pretty key clients for us right now. And yeah, it's been wide open ever since. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to start off, come have a quick start. And, I've got, call it $250,000 of opportunities lined up for the back half of the year. So we're, now I'm at the point where it's like, I've got a few guys that fly the drone. Now I'm starting to look for some other helpers and, potentially getting another truck and another drone and just really looking to expand it. So yeah, that's,
I appreciate the backdrop. I'm sitting here like, I told you we had 30 minutes roughly on this episode, and you're going through a bunch of stuff. I'm like, where do I take this conversation? Because there's a lot we could dive into. I think I want to go more of like the tactical route, Cameron, just kind of really understand the business a little bit better. Obviously, there's a whole story about, the inspiration to get into the business, why you chose, to join Condor versus kind of continuing on your own. Like we could probably touch on a little bit of that. But one of my main questions, because I mean, I'm a sales guy just like you, and I'm always interested in this. I think until the day I die, I'm always going to have that urge to like close deals, right? Or just get responses, that dopamine hit of somebody that like positively replies to a message, a cold call, a LinkedIn DM, something on Instagram, a cold email. When you talk about, you dialed up the Duke University facilities director, like how did that engagement go? Like, are these folks receptive to these types of calls? Are they used to them? Are you like standing out as one in a million? Like nobody ever picks up the phone and calls. And then like, what's the value prop for you to get them interested? To be like, yeah, we'll take you up on that offer. Like, what's that sales process and engagement like?
Yeah. Like I've spent so many years like making cold calls and kind of figuring out what's your kind of ideal customer, your ICP, right? Like I think starting off with figuring out, understanding who you're going to be selling to, what is your ICP? That's sort of where I started right at the beginning. So I narrowed that down. And then, I got a list of contacts. One thing I've used like auto dialers, so I can get, massive amounts of calls out in a day.
Yeah.
The hit ratio is never really great, right? But like, so if you make 100 calls in a day, you might have 5 to 10 good conversations, right? Yeah. But it's taken a high volume of outreach, and like, I kind of couple that with LinkedIn. I've got about 8,000 connections over LinkedIn, and that's taken me probably 15 years to really gain. But at night, like every night I'm in that. I mean, I think every week I pretty much max out my limit of connections, which is kind of ridiculous. But that's, because when I go and I post videos, like I want people who I've connected with, who I know are my ideal customer profile. I want them to, in hopes that they'll see it, and I've gotten several calls over the past few weeks that, because we've been posting more videos on LinkedIn, and I've gotten several calls from my post on LinkedIn. That's helped a lot. But it takes a lot of a lot of pay. Like I want it all to come at once, right? But it does. I've joined several associations. We're cleaning hotels all over North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia right now. So like, I've joined the Triangle Area Hotel Motel Association. That's got me some good business. I'm on the board now there, and that's starting to trickle into the hotel space. So like, it's sort of a multitude of things. Like I'm part of ILMA, I'm part of IRM, I'm part of NAIOP, I'm part of the Hotel Motel Association. So like, being 6 months into this, like I knew I had no brand like for myself. Like people didn't know Cameron
Yeah.
Falkner for flying drones and pressure washing, but
Right.
my main goal is to try to build that right as quickly as possible and start getting some referrals, and then it's going to start snowballing here in a couple of years.
Honestly, I think you're hitting, Cameron, on a lot of the things where when the most successful folks, at least from what I've heard, because I'm not, I'm still fairly young. I haven't been in this space or in business ownership myself for long enough to be like, oh, I've seen this for the last 20 years. But what I've heard, and I think most folks have heard the same, is like the skills or the professions that translate well to business ownership are those folks that come from a sales background. So I think you're touching on a lot of that stuff. But and I think one of the keys for me that I've heard from you is just like the patience, but also the volume. And I think that gets lost in translation a lot, especially with folks that start businesses. Like they expect it to come like that. Even in like our technology sales careers, when you walk into an existing company, regardless of how long they've been there, 20 years, 30 years, 5 years, there's still work to be done, like groundwork to be laid before you start seeing the benefits of all the work you put in. So it's even that times 10 when you're starting your own business and you are the frontline sales guy and it's a brand new business. So I think it's important just to mention that, like, one, patience for sure, but two, volume play, especially in the trades when you're talking pressure washing, junk removal, HVAC, plumbing. Dude, I hate to say that it's not hard. There's much more difficult technical sales out there, like within technology, software, heck, even like architectural design and construction. Like what we're doing, we already know people buy what we are selling, which is a good thing. Now it's just a matter of getting in front of folks, being not feeling like you're coming off like a scammer or being a pest, which kind of dovetails into my next question, Cameron. Like, outside of the effort that you put in and the volume to drive sales and drive leads, is there like and you don't have to give away the secret sauce here, but is there like a hook that eventually inside of one of these calls or messages to somebody that you're trying to do business with that you can put your finger on and be like, that's why they gave us a shot? Like, is it I'm assuming it's the interest in, like, what is this guy talking about with pressure washing with drones? Like,
Yeah, like I'll be honest, like the drone is as soon as I mentioned the drone with pressure washing, that's what we specialize in. That's what hooks them, because I would say 95% of the people that I'm talking to have never heard of it, never there. And then as soon as I say like I have an exterior cleaning company. We specialize in drone cleaning. And as soon as I say the word drone cleaning, it's immediate some type of interest, and like that's what, I think anybody that owns a drone and that's pressure washing, they probably immediately think like, this guy is definitely, he knows what he's doing, first of all, because he's crazy enough to fly a drone 200 feet in the air and clean something. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the drone, and I try to, on my calls, like I try not to just like throw up on them right at like off the bat. Like I try to make it more casual, like, sorry to, I'm sorry to call you out of the blue here, but I'm working with several other facility managers in your space. I might take some time to look at them on LinkedIn and see if they've got some mutual connections. Maybe I drop we're mutually connected with SoSo or Duke University. We just cleaned for Duke. And if I'm calling these other universities, I'm referencing Duke. Like, if Duke University is going to allow me to clean their prestigious campus in their buildings, like, I would say probably most other colleges are gonna at least hear me out, So like, I try to like make it not just, there's a million pressure washing companies out there. I mean, there's probably 100 in Little Wilmington, or more. And I'm trying to I've tried to figure out a way to just separate myself from the pack, and the drone does that, and then trying to reference a lot of the work that we're doing right now, just to make them more comfortable.
My wheels are turning with just like the line openers that you could go with. Like, hey man, do you like drones? Like that's what I would probably go with,
Yeah, yeah, like exactly. Like
roll into it.
just drop the word drone and
Or
they're
like, hey Steve, I just flew a drone over the Duke football field. We or the building and we cleaned it. Like, is that, anyways. Okay, that's good stuff. So I guess kind of going to current state today, like what does the team look like, Cameron? How many of you are there? Like, are you doing a lot of the jobs? Are you trying to get out of the field role? Like what's your state today look like, and kind of what do you want to look like in a year from
Yeah. So I mean, being 6 months in, I'm on every single job. And the way Condor, the way they've built the franchise is to be more of an owner operator model, especially when it comes to the drone work. We do traditional pressure washing as well. Like I go, I'm partnered with several other landscaping companies or painters or whatever it may be, where I'm going to clean a gas station in Columbia, South Carolina tomorrow.
now?
Not all my jobs are drone jobs, but, my goal is to get 3 to 4 drone jobs a month that I specifically will always be on all my drone jobs. But the goal is I'd love to, I want to expand into other markets, right? Whether that's, if we do, the way I see myself scaling is to try to, within the franchise is to, almost be a master franchisor and, find people in certain markets that maybe I can, I have a percentage in that. I want anybody that's going to be drone cleaning to have some type of ownership in the company,
Right.
or in that market per se. And then, we go about it that way. I think it's hard to have people that don't have some type of stake in the game to be flying a $50,000 drone. And,
Yeah.
just a lot of things that could potentially go wrong with
Totally.
it and with anything really. You
Yeah.
hear horror stories all the time with
Yeah.
pressure water, but you know,
Well, it sounds like you cover a pretty big territory today. Maybe that's just because the franchise is I shouldn't say so new, but just more so in the infancy stages where you have the ability to go take care of a job in Columbia or Wilmington, right? It sounds like you cover, it's kind of like, man, just get the business wherever you can that's like feasible for you. But like, what does that look like for the customer though, right? Can you talk a little bit more about like if I assume you do just standard pressure washing jobs if a customer has no interest in the drone side, and like what's the difference? I mean, I assume there's a pretty big difference in price. Is that accurate?
yeah, there's definitely a difference in price. Really, the drone is meant for buildings that are four to up to, I would say 17 stories is about
Yeah.
where we max out with a drone. I mean, really, 15 to 17 stories or so. 180 feet is really where the drone maxes out.
Mm,
Because it's hooked to a 300-foot hose.
okay.
And the drone's got a 55-pound payload on it. So we're pumping 11 gallons of water per minute up to the drone and cleaning.
Yeah.
We're able to cut out, especially for the hotel space, the you know, places like college campuses that don't necessarily want to have a boom lift, a man lift on site
Mhm.
that's going to be, tearing up their landscape,
Right.
be disruptive to business,
Mhm.
sitting out there for weeks or months at a time, just looking bad, looking like a construction site.
Yeah.
Or if there's certain buildings that, don't have tie-offs for folks to rappel off of the building. We're good for that. I've heard a lot of stories where, they just, for liability reasons, they don't want, some of these companies just don't want to have people rappelling off the building, or they
Yeah.
don't want to be sending people 120 feet in a man lift with pressure washers.
Mhm.
It can seem a bit inhumane sometimes, and it's hard work when you're 120, 130 feet stretched out on a man lift, having to physically pressure wash that. Where,
Yeah.
with the drone, we're all on the ground controlling the drone from a remote control.
Yeah.
It's way more efficient. We can get it done faster, safer, and more cost effective. That's kind of
Interesting.
the little, the three tagline that we like to say: safer, faster, efficient.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, in the boom lift, from my experience, those can get, I mean, outside of just the eyesore that it is or that it's in the way, like those are expensive. I mean, you've got to, if you don't have one that's company owned, or like you're a university and you don't just happen to own one, you got to go rent one. Like those are expensive. Like $500 drop off fee, another $500 a day. Like,
Yeah.
I can run a bill up pretty significantly.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what we're finding. I mean, it's that we're cutting out that $1,500 to $2,000 add-on expense to all the quotes that we don't have to add in there. So we're right there off the bat, we're charging a square foot rate that makes sense to us, but we're not having to tag on an extra couple $1,000s.
Yeah.
And when I'm going out and quoting 15, 20, 30 hotels for some of these management companies, some of these companies, the $1,500 to $2,000 across 30 hotels adds up pretty quick.
Yeah. Do you run into? I've always been curious, Cameron. Like, if you call somebody, has anybody ever been like, I just don't care about the cleanliness of the building? Like, is that a pushback?
It's never been a pushback. I think the biggest thing is like they've either just recently had it cleaned, or they're just it's just maybe not in the budget for this year, or it's either we're hitting them at a bad time, but they want me to follow back up with them, or you very rarely hear of anybody. I mean, but the crazy thing is you go look at all these hotels that are out there as an example, and most of them are pretty darn dirty, and I think it's just a lot of them just don't. It's just not the first thing that they think about. It's like, man, I need to get this big building clean, and then they don't know who to reach out to, who's gonna really have the insurance to be able to clean 4 to 15 stories. I mean, that's a whole separate type of insurance that we're covered by to clean up at those heights. And
that's where my question came from, right? Like, you drive by a fast food joint, a hotel. Most of what I see, I'm like, man, those I see it because I'm kind of just OCD that way. I don't know if the average citizen does, but I'll look at it and be like, that don't look like they've had that clean in like years. And I'm like, and then I start thinking, well, they probably just don't care, and they don't necessarily see the ROI. Like, that's always been kind of my feeling of like, maybe from a sales perspective, where you could counter this is like, is that the biggest roadblock, is like just trying to sell it as like, you need your building clean because it's going to give you X, Y, Z. It's going to give you more business, more foot traffic. Aesthetically, it's better. That's why, like, that's what I assume it would be. I just don't know. Like, I've never been in those sales conversations, so I don't know what that feedback is like.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the biggest thing is like almost getting in touch with the right person too, because like there's so many layers of people that you think are the right ICP, but they really aren't. They'll take your quote and then you just never hear back. So like, I think it's, a lot of it's just really, especially when you get at the corporate level, like more I call it the enterprise level, right? Like, there's residential, and then there's commercial, which is, mostly all commercial, and industrial is what we focus on.
Yeah.
But, when it comes to the big enterprise, like it's just, they might have a facility management company that handles all that. But that facility management company may not really care about pressure washing or even think about it because they have so many other tasks. So it's like, how do you then get into that facility management company and sell them on the fact that we can clean all your properties, and we can do it much safer and efficient and faster than anybody else in the market.
Totally. Like, the lady at the front desk at the hotel probably doesn't care whether the building's clean, but like, she might be able to get you a name that gets you a name, and you start climbing the ladder. It makes sense. What's either the coolest location or building or thing that you've cleaned, Cameron, or like the holy grail of like, I would really one day love to clean, the water tower in Wilmington or whatever it is. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, no, I care a ton about that because the best thing I've cleaned so far was Duke's football stadium, the Blue Level Tower. Like, that was the mecca. I'd love to go. I'm talking to a couple other universities about their football stadiums right now, dovetailing after Duke. After Duke, I think it'd be cool to go clean like the Dean Smith Center. Here in the Carolinas, that'd be
definitely
cool.
Needs it. That place looks like it hasn't been cleaned.
It is. It's totally dirty, and the drone. It's like the drone would be perfect for that. That type of environment, because there's just the way it bends around the sides. Like, there's no way you can get a lift in there. So it's funny. I was driving down to South Carolina last week, and I was like, the south of the border, like that big hat. I was like, that'd be kind of cool to clean.
Yeah. Or the big Georgia peach off of what is it, 85?
Yeah, the Georgia peach. Actually, our guy Ryan Godwin cleaned the Space Needle in Seattle, so
Oh, sick.
that was pretty marquee. And then we cleaned the Pittsburgh Penguins arena this year.
Oh, that's
We've cleaned some pretty cool things so far, but
yeah.
it's like every day I feel like my neck hurts half the time because like I used to just look on at one story buildings kind of like, oh, that house needs cleaning, but now I'm just
Yeah.
like I'm looking up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would think a value prop, and you guys have probably already thought about all this stuff. So I'm just like, who's this guy trying to talk to me about the business? But like, when I feel like most sports experiences these days online, at least like if I'm watching a game, there's always an aerial shot of the Smith Center or Kenan Stadium or whatever. And like maybe there's a play there of like, hey, if you guys want this to look better on TV, like you should pressure wash it. Like it'll shine, it'll sparkle, like it looks great. Don't get me wrong, it's tree lined,
Yeah.
and your building is fine, but like, man, you could 10x the engagement here just based on having a clean building. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was a big thing for Duke too. It's like a lot of I mean, it's a brick building, and a lot of the concrete capstones were just black, from
Yeah,
all the mold and mildew over the years. But for all the Duke fans, if you go to a football game this year, take a look at the stadium, and all those capstones are perfect, look brand new again.
yeah. Awesome.
We've also, we're starting to hear, I mean, you hear more about sustainability and ESG and just the environmental impacts of stuff. And we've got chemicals that we're starting to spray now that are environmentally friendly. We
Yeah,
don't have to use water. We can spray it on and leave it. It just, it's not going to be the immediate quick clean, but it may take 2 to 3 months for it to clear up. But
right.
it's got enzymes in the chemical that are just constantly killing all the mold and mildew. And then after 2 or 3 months, it's going to be fully cleared. And so, we can show massive water savings or environmental and sustainability impacts,
Mhm.
that a lot of these corporate companies are having to go report.
Yeah.
That's another kind of avenue that I'm trying to take into like the more enterprise space.
Well, and just the labor conversation that you mentioned earlier, right? Like, and I don't know if there's certain some of these organizations are trying to work towards anything like they are with green initiatives, but like when you talk about not having to throw somebody up 5 stories, 10 stories to go do something, that's a liability. That's an obvious liability. But rather you can reduce the amount of people that have to show up and do this job because we're using drones. You don't have to bring in as much equipment. That's an environmental play. Like you don't have to have a logistics company driving in from wherever, dropping off a boom lift. Like it all seems like it plays into the green initiatives, but also just the labor aspect of it. I mean, it's a hot topic these days around not just the US, but the globe of like, what are we paying people? Where it's like, well, what about the liability that you have to pay somebody for a workers' comp claim, right? They fall off a building. So
Yeah. I mean, even with Duke, it took us, as big as that tower is, I can't remember how many square feet, call it 50,000 square feet, right?
Mhm.
We did it with 2 guys, me and a drone pilot, and it just, and the amount of time it took us to clean that big I mean, it would have taken somebody else at least a week or more to
Yeah.
clean what we did in a few days.
Yeah. Awesome.
But yeah, it's drone's been everything for us.
Yeah, that's definitely the differentiator. And I know we're coming up on our time here, Cameron, but as we start to wind it down, I mean, I don't know that we've talked about glitz and glamour on this episode, but I always try to give folks like the reality, the real side of business ownership. So is there anything that kind of comes to mind? I think, 1 or 2 things where you're like, yeah, that I started my own business and candidly, this is really difficult. Like I rack my brain every day. This is, I actually work more hours than I did at a corporate job, like whatever that is. Like, can you give the audience a little something there?
Yeah. I mean, I will just say, like, starting a new business, like I've been in the corporate space for 15 years, collected a paycheck every month or every couple of weeks, whatever it may be. But like,
Yeah.
I've got a 2-year-old who's about to turn 3 here in a couple of weeks. And, I've got a wife, I've got a mortgage, I've got,
Yeah.
I've got plenty of payments to make. And, I was scared to my core, like about as scared as I could possibly be just entering it. Right. And I mean, the first 6 months have been extreme. I mean, there's been some days where I'm like jumping through the roof, thinking I'm about to take over the world. And then other days I'm like, oh my God, I'm like about to have a
Yeah.
panic attack,
Yeah.
So like, I think it's, in the cash flow too, right? Like I'm at a position where my business checking account's gotten pretty low, right? Like lower than I feel comfortable with being, but I've also got, almost, six digits, close to six digits coming
Yeah.
in, right? That's just been, we've done some jobs where it's been net 60 or either,
Oh yeah.
net 30. And, it's like, so I've got stuff trickling in nonstop. Like managing the cash flow and is as I've got a bookkeeper, but that's probably my my serious part of the business. Like I know how to sell and go get the business, and that's fun for me. And then going out and seeing something dirty and cleaning it, like that's awesome. But like just the back end and the bookkeeping and the accounting and paying your taxes and all that stuff is something that definitely has woken me up.
Yeah.
Kept me up.
I feel like I'm looking in the mirror. I'm like, yeah, I align with that. You don't know, like, the importance of numbers, I think, regardless of whether you're a business owner or not. But until you get into actually having a business, there's so much more that like, and this is probably true across the board in business in general, but specifically with numbers, taxes, payroll, all this stuff that's like, I had no clue. One, that even existed really in business, but two, I don't have the skill set for that. Maybe at a very basic level, but yeah, and that could be accounting, it could be finance, it could be, I'm not a sales guy, I'm more of a tactician. I don't like to do sales. So like, I think there's a lesson there of just knowing when to pull in resources and how to do it strategically so that obviously you don't have to go out and hire a 6-figure salaried person to come in and do that for you. But I think we're living in interesting times today for sure, but also good times where you can find gig labor and you can find contract workers that can help you, especially in the space that we're in with small businesses, to help grow it without having to break the bank or bring somebody on full time that really could ultimately sink your company when you're actually trying to help it. No, this is good, Cameron. I appreciate you jumping on. I'll be cheering you on from the sidelines. And I think this is just like the coolest thing ever. So hopefully everybody else sees that as well, specifically facility directors. But one last question, kind of a fun question. What's the best restaurant to eat at in?
I think so. My wife's an artist, which is the painting right behind me. I had to make sure Davis was okay with me having that behind me. But she just the Commodore Club is a new place that opened on Wrightsville Beach, and then there's a new steakhouse. A new steakhouse right before you get on Wrightsville Beach, where my wife has got 2 paintings in. That's an awesome place. Probably my favorite place is called Kipo's. It's off Eastwood, heading into Wrightsville Beach, but it's a Greek restaurant. The owner's awesome, and they've got a cool outdoor area with palm trees, like cool DJ vibe outside. After kind of starting at like 8 or 9 o'clock. So that's my place. I would recommend Kipo's
for sure. Yeah, for some reason, as I gotten into my latter years here of life and having the family, we've started to vacation like south of Wilmington. Get this year we went to Oak Island. Last year we went to the Isle of Palm. So like getting down to like that Charleston area. I don't know why, but we got to get back up to the Wilmington, Wrightsville area. I vacationed a little bit like out in Atlantic Beach when I was a kid. I grew up in Chapel Hill, but like for some reason we've started to migrate south. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, Wrightsville Beach is awesome. It's grown like crazy. We've been here for 2 years, and tons of young people. It's starting to be more of a tech community and entrepreneurship, and it feels like a community. So we like it here a lot.
Totally. Well, Cameron, thank you again. For folks that want to potentially contact you, find out more about Condor, potentially utilize your services, what's the best way for them to reach out and get in touch?
Yeah. My phone number is 252-432-2409. And then I can be reached on my email at Cameron, Cameron at condorclean.com. And then we have a YouTube channel. If you just type in Condor Cleaning, we have a ton of different drone videos from industrial, commercial, all kinds of really cool drone cleaning videos.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes, and we'll be eagerly awaiting the drone videos. I think that's an awesome video to see. So Cameron, thank you again, man. Sounds like you're doing amazing things, and wishing you all the best.
All right. Appreciate it, Davis. Thanks, everybody.